Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that your name be glorified as we continue to know, love you, and serve you during the 17th week of ordinary time. Let us be open to your grace, and let us be docile to that grace, that we may always come to follow you deeply and the way you want us to seek you. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, as I said, all this week we're going to be looking at Jeremiah. And today we're going to look at those kind of readings that atheists always point at when they say, well, we thought God was a God of peace. I don't see that today. And, understandable, because they're asking questions about why God would do what we're going to see today. But we always have to see it within context. So remember what we're talking about. Jeremiah is speaking to the southern kingdom. He is, because the northern kingdom is gone, the southern kingdom of Judah, they have gone astray, just as originally the northern kingdom did about 100 some odd years before. And so did the southern kingdom, but they repented. And now again, they're walking down this path away from the Lord. As you know, the worst sin that can be committed by anyone in Israel, or Judah in this case, but any of the Jews, is idolatry. So they're practicing idolatry, and that's clearly stated in yesterday's reading. If you remember, when we looked at yesterday's reading, one of the things that we see is that God is saying to them that you are following these other gods, you are serving them, you're worshiping them. And so they're clearly practicing idolatry. We also remember that in Jeremiah, I think it's the 19th chapter, you have the most blatant form or description of idolatry which they're practicing, which is they're sacrificing their children to Molech. So again, when we see that they are turning away from the Lord, it's not all of a sudden they're saying bad words. It's they are practicing the idolatry of the pagans around them. And what happens if we lose everything that is within Judaism to the pagans? Well, then there's no more Judaism, just like when was the last time you met those who practiced the religion of the Phoenicians, the sea peoples? Well, you don't. I mean, there may be a few still around, just as there are a few Zoroastrians still around, but not to the level that you would see Judaism, or for that matter, Christianity. And remember, Judaism is going to be the source of ultimately Christianity, where Jesus is going to bring salvation to the whole world. So the importance of them following the Lord and doing what the Lord has called them to do is obviously intense. And he can't allow them to walk down this path away from them and say, oh, that's okay, because it isn't. But in this passage, what you're going to see is some real serious destruction that is coming down the path. This really isn't a destruction of a description of what is happening. It's what will happen, and so we want to see that as well. So as we look at this reading, we see that there is a passage where the Lord is saying to Judea through Jeremiah that he is going to pour out their wickedness, which is the wickedness of those who turn away from the Lord, upon them. In other words, they will fall to their wickedness. Now, do we see a similar example of that in the New Testament? Well, generally, yes, but not in the same way. And again, you have to understand the reading. So what is happening in the New Testament? In the New Testament, in Romans 1, we see something that I always point out is always misinterpreted. In Romans 1, you see what happens is people practice idolatry. So again, that's the worst sin in the Bible. They start worshiping the creature instead of the creator, which is essentially what goes on here. And in doing so, their minds are darkened and they follow the wrong path. And this is exactly what's going on here. And again, what disaster beholds the world if this happens? well, you lose God and then you fall prey to these false gods. Well, here's the thing. If the gods are false, what kind of damage can they do? Well, the gods become a projection of all that is bad within the humanity. And therefore, you have such things as no forgiveness. You have such things as anger, as retribution, to a level the likes of which God would never allow at all. So you have this great evil destruction. One of the things that popped into my mind recently, and I was seeing this in light of a video on YouTube, and it was a powerful thing to understand that we see that the ultimate punishment in Judaism is someone to be executed, usually stoned to death. Well, that's nothing compared to what the pagans did, because they tortured people to death. We're going to talk more about this on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. We're back, and we're talking about this powerful warning by the Lord. Actually, it's not even a warning. It's it's that old saying, I'm not giving you a threat, it's a promise. Well, essentially, that's what the Lord's doing here. And what I was saying is, if you look in the Old Testament of some of the punishments of the Lord, they are that people will be stoned to death, for example, for adultery or something like that. But don't forget, in the pagan societies, they tortured people to death. So if you've ever seen the movie The Mummy, this is a great example, even though it's a fiction movie, but it's a great example. What is the warning that is given to the man who eventually becomes the mummy? For his evil, death is only the beginning. And that's something that the Lord did not allow. But what what's happening here is because they've given them over to the pagan forces, then they will be subject to the pagan actions. We see something similar to that in our relationship with God and that of the devil, because the way everything works is we're called to follow the law, but we can't perfectly follow the law. And therefore, Jesus came to die and resurrect so that we would not be subject to the punishment of the law. If we reject that promise of Jesus, if we reject that action of Jesus and that salvation, well, where do we end up? We end up falling under the law. And there is there's no recourse. If we turn away from the Lord, there's no recourse. We fall under the law. And who is in charge of the law? Well, God is, right? No, the devil is. This is remember who Satan is. Satan is the accuser. And he is the one who basically has his own kingdom. That's a famous line by Saul Alinsky, which shows this absolute, complete misunderstanding of who Satan is, because he praises Satan as being the first radical, because even though he lost his battle, he still ended up with his own kingdom. And that's such a ridiculous idea, because what is his own kingdom? It's hell. But this is what happens. So you fall under that kingdom, and that kingdom has no love, mercy, anything. It is the law. Remember, exorcists will teach you that the devil is the most legalistic being in the universe. The devil is very legalistic. And the whole thing is, when you stand before, we're talking about Catholic teaching, when you stand before the throne of God, the devil gives you is the one who is the accuser. So list all the things that you have done against the law, and the Lord acknowledges that, judges you guilty, and then forgives you the punishment. And so you enter the kingdom. Without God, you don't have that. And so then you have to suffer the punishment, which is whatever the devil determines, and you can never work off all that you have done. This is also in the parable of the steward who refuses to forgive. And so the king forgives him his huge amount that he owes, and then he goes after someone else who owes just a tiny bit. And then the king gets so upset over this that he makes him pay back all that he owes, and there's no way he can do that. Well, that's how that system works. Well, I'm giving you that because that's what the Jews have turned themselves over by turning over to the pagans. Because by going and following the pagan ways, then they fall under the pagan rules. And the pagan rules have no mercy. And this is the important consideration. There's no mercy there. There is mercy in God. There's no mercy in paganism. Why? Because paganism, and I'm talking about the ancient pagans. I'm not talking about if your next door neighbor happens to be someone who calls himself a pagan. I'm not necessarily talking about him. I'm talking about the ancient pagans. There is no mercy because it's a projection of all the everything that is in humanity. So what happens is that anger becomes this interminable anger. That lack of forgiveness becomes this interminable lack of forgiveness, rooted in the laws, because that's what this ancient paganism had become. So it's really important, and the Lord doesn't want this, and he's leading people away. But when they choose to reject him and saying no matter what he does to try to turn them back, then what is he saying to them? He's saying to them, if this is what you want, this is what you will get. And remember, this is how it all works. So they will live under this paganism, which the ancient paganism, which has no mercy. And this is an important consideration. We're going to see more about that tomorrow. So we'll be back tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day. We'll see you then. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com. And you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. Remember, when you're looking for a place to attend Mass, and if you don't already attend Mass at your local parish, come to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. We're located at 43 Holton Street in Allston, just a few blocks up from Soldiers Field Road. And you can check us out, come to our 10 o'clock a.m. Mass, and come to experience our Catholic worship at St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts.